In the thatched huts of medieval Japan, winter was not a season, it was a trial. The wind howled through paper walls, the earthen floors turned to stone, and breath hung like ghosts in the dark. No fireplaces, no blankets, no comfort. Only straw, smoke, and the warmth of human closeness. Yet somehow peasants slept deeply, quietly, beneath the roar of the wind. They did not fight the cold, they learned to live with it, turning sleep itself into a humble art of survival. In the northern lands of Honshu and deep within the Japanese Alps, winter arrived like a quiet enemy. Snow piled high enough to bury rooftops, and the air turned to crystal. Peasants lived in homes built not for comfort but for endurance. Mud walls, bamboo frames, and thatched roofs that creaked under the weight of frost. When the wind blew, it whistled through every crack, filling the rooms with a breath colder than silence. The windows were made of washi paper, thin as thought, unable to stop the wind. Inside, the floor was packed earth, hard as frozen clay, and even the air smelled of soil and smoke. There was no true separation between inside and outside, only a fragile barrier of patience. Every winter night became a test, how to sleep when the body trembled and the world froze around you. For the medieval peasant, survival was not about fighting nature, it was about adapting to her. The cold could not be banished, so it was accepted, respected. They sealed the doors with straw mats, hung simple cloth screens, and kept their world small, their movements slow. Even in the poorest huts there was rhythm in how they prepared for night, an ancient wisdom that understood warmth was not a luxury but a shared ritual. Most peasants slept directly on the earthen floor, called doma, a space both kitchen and bed, hard but familiar. Before night fell, they spread thick layers of straw, sometimes covered with a rough tatami mat to keep away the damp. Straw was life. It insulated, cushioned, and softened the chill rising from the ground. In wet regions, families raised their floors slightly, stacking dry reeds beneath. The sound of rustling straw became part of the night itself. Each movement whispered warmth through the room. There was no bed frame, no pillow, only bundles of straw or folded cloth under the head. At the heart of the house, a small hibachi brazier glowed softly, fed with charcoal before sleep. It could not heat the room, but it dried the air, gave a faint orange pulse that people called the heart of the night. Children huddled near it while adults checked that the fire would not smoke or suffocate them. When the glow dimmed, darkness and silence returned. Yet under layers of straw they felt a quiet peace. It was not comfort, but it was enough to dream. In medieval Japan, the luxury of a soft futon belonged only to the wealthy. For peasants, the knight's armour was made from what the fields could spare, straw, hemp cloth, and layers of worn garments. They called their bedding warabutin, a mattress woven from rice straw tied together by hand and filled with the scent of harvest. It was scratchy, uneven, but miraculously warm. When the air turned sharp as a blade, they added more straw, sometimes wrapping it in coarse fabric to make a makeshift quilt, the futon of the poor. Over time, these straw quilts grew darker from smoke and sweat, a living record of survival. Each piece of bedding was handmade, passed down, repaired endlessly. Nothing was wasted. The smell of dried grass mixed with ash from the hearth, forming a fragrance only the poor knew. Warmth without fire, comfort without softness. Children slept beneath old work coats, while elders wore their heavy hemp robes even in bed. To outsiders it may seem harsh, but within those thin walls the rustle of straw was the sound of safety. Rags, straw and smoke, this was the blanket of Japan's forgotten winters. It didn't promise comfort, it promised endurance, and through it the peasants found something deeper than warmth, the quiet dignity of those who survive with what little the earth allows. Peasants never undressed to sleep. Their nightclothes were the same garments they were worked in, thick hemp or cotton coats patched and heavy with use. In the snow-covered north, families wrapped scarves around their heads, hands and feet before lying down. Every layer mattered. Every knot was a shield against the invisible enemy of cold. They wrapped their feet in straw sandals or cloth even under the blankets to keep circulation alive through the night. Some wore hanten, short-padded jackets filled with cotton scraps, serving as both coat and comforter. The rough fibres brushed the skin, but the friction itself generated a faint heat, proof that warmth could come from movement, not luxury. When the nights grew cruel, families mumly shared what little insulation they had. They pressed close, the older protecting the young, the strong sheltering the frail. Their breath rose as white smoke in the dim light. a reminder that life itself was still burning. No one spoke much at night. Words froze in the air. Instead, they listened to the sound of breathing, to the creak of the roof, to the faint crackle of charcoal in the brazier. Wrapped in straw and silence, they surrendered to the cold as one, never truly warm but never entirely defeated. At the centre of every peasant's home stood a fragile source of heat, the aurori or hibachi. These were small earthen hearths filled with charcoal, not large enough to warm the whole house, but vital for life itself. The flame was modest, often no more than a few glowing embers covered by ash to last until dawn. It provided light, dried the damp air, and most importantly, a place for the family to gather. Before sleeping, they placed the brazier near their feet or at the corner of the room. A father would check the fire, ensuring it burned gently. Too weak, and everyone would freeze. Too strong, and they might never wake. Carbon monoxide poisoning, known but unnamed, haunted every winter. Thus, the Japanese peasant learned balance not from luxury but from survival. Children were warned never to sleep too close to the fire, yet every night they inched nearer, drawn by the faint comfort of warmth. The smoke hung low, curling through the paper walls, painting them brown over years. Ashes became part of the house itself, a silent witness to generations who endured. It was not a fireplace like those of Europe, grand and crackling. It was a humble heart, just enough to keep the cold from taking everything. To live beside fire was to remember its mercy and its danger, both burning quietly in the same breath. When the night deepened and the cold stiffened their fingers, families turned to the oldest warmth of all, each other. In the poorest villages, everyone shared a single mat lying shoulder to shoulder, wrapped in layers of straw and cloth. It was not just custom, it was strategy. Body heat became their most reliable defense against frost. Parents placed children in the center, cocooned between adult bodies, while grandparents took the outer edges, exposed to the cold but accepting their place with quiet resilience. They rotated positions when nights grew unbearable, taking turns to feel the chill, so no one would suffer too long. The warmth of another's breath, the rhythm of shared sleep, it created a kind of peace no fire could give. Even the smallest infant learned to sleep to the sound of others breathing, to the soft rustle of straw shifting under the weight of survival. To sleep alone in winter was unthinkable. Togetherness was not only love, it was life itself. Under one blanket of straw separated by nothing but closeness, the peasants of medieval Japan practiced an ancient art of endurance, the warmth of many hearts beating as one, defying the endless night. Before surrendering to the freezing dark, every peasant family followed small rituals, habits born from fear, faith, and routine. The mother would shake out the straw bedding, burning a handful of husks or chaff to drive away dampness and insects. She knew the scent of smoke meant safety, a thin line between health and sickness. The father checked the hibachi, adjusting the charcoal so that it glowed faintly but would not suffocate the room. He slid the paper doors shut, leaving only a narrow gap for air and the sigh of wind. Then silence fell, a silence so deep that even the walls seemed to breathe. Before lying down, the family knelt together, hands pressed before a small Buddhist altar or a simple wooden shelf that held a charm. They whispered short prayers, asking for protection from sickness, frost, and bad dreams. Sometimes the mother murmured lullabies, not to calm the children, but to remind them that they were alive, together, and safe for now. Every gesture was quiet, deliberate. Sleep was not taken for granted. It was earned as if the night itself had to permit it. When the final ember dimmed and the prayers ended, the family slipped under straw blankets like travellers entering another realm, trusting that warmth, faith, and fatigue would carry them to morning. The nights of medieval Japan had their own kind of music. It was not made by instruments, but by the world itself, by wind, fire, and the breathing of those who endured them. Inside the hut, smoke curled lazily upward, turning the air grey. Its cell, earthy, bitter, comforting, wrapped around the sleepers like an invisible blanket. Outside, the wind sang through bamboo walls, whistling softly, then roaring like the sea. The sound was constant, yet never cruel. It reminded them that nature was alive, watching, present. Sometimes, snow slid from the roof with a dull thud, or a stray animal rustled near the door. These were not disturbances, they were part of the rhythm of survival. Children learned to fall asleep to those sounds, their dreams mingling with the wind. The flicker of the dying fire danced across the straw, painting the room in moving shadows. To those who had nothing, that quiet symphony became a kind of comfort, a proof that life continued even in stillness. For the peasants of medieval Japan, warmth was not only felt through skin, it was heard, felt and remembered. The low hum of wind, the hiss of burning straw, the faint heartbeat of the hearth. Within these fragile sounds, they found peace amid the cold, as though winter itself was whispering them to sleep. Winter did not only bring cold, it brought sickness. Coughs echoed through the thin walls, and fevered breaths mingled with the smoke of the brazier. For the peasants, illness was not an event. It was a visitor that came each year with the snow. Without doctors or medicines, their healing depended on warmth, rest, and faith. They believed that if the stomach, back, and feet stayed warm, life could endure. When someone fell ill, the family gathered close, their bodies forming a shield of heat around the sick. A small bowl of ginger tea or miso broth was placed beside the futon of straw. The mother fed the patient with quiet hands, whispering old prayers between each breath. Sometimes they placed a small pot of embers near the feet, carefully watched through the night. The glow of that charcoal flame was both a comfort and a danger, a reminder that warmth and death often slept side by side. If the illness passed, it was said that the gods had granted mercy. If not, the smoke from the hearth became the family's only companion in mourning. Still, they never cursed the cold. They accepted it as part of the cycle that shaped them, just as snow-covered fields that would bloom again. Even in sickness, they found humility, believing that survival was not victory, but harmony with what could not be changed. The peasants of medieval Japan did not possess comfort, but they mastered endurance. They lived within walls of straw, beneath roofs that breathed, and still found ways to rest, to dream, to wake again. Each night was a negotiation with the cold, and each morning a quiet triumph. Their homes smelled of smoke and life itself. The hiss of wind, the creak of bamboo, the warmth of shared breath, these were their luxuries, their symphonies of survival. They did not sleep to escape the world, they slept to remain part of it. Even in hardship there was grace, a kind of peace found only by those who have nothing left to waste. Modern comfort has made us forget this art, to live in balance with discomfort, to find beauty in endurance. But for those farmers who slept through the endless winters, warmth was not a possession, it was a memory, a connection between bodies and the earth. In the frozen silence of their nights, they taught us something timeless, that to survive is not merely to live, but to keep one's heart warm, even when the world itself has turned to ice.